So your question is, what is truth? Yeah, so truth is an idea. So everybody has ideas, and everybody has ideas about what truth is. But Zen means cut through your thinking, cut through your ideas. So when we say like true self, like my teacher who was also Jan's teacher and Stan's teacher and people who were here long enough before he died, because he would visit us actually once a year until sometime in the 90s. And he would say, Zen means attain your true self and help this world. But the word true is a kind of, it's sort of a red herring. It's leading us kind of in the wrong direction. Because then we think that there's something that is true, and we can hold on to this truth. But it's not like that. This world is constantly changing. So in Theravada Buddhism, the Buddhism of Southeast Asia, in Theravada Buddhism, the main sort of concept is impermanence. So things arise, and they stay, and then they disappear. But in Mahayana Buddhism, and Zen is part of Mahayana, the main concept is emptiness. And emptiness means there's no thing to arise, no thing to stay, and no thing to disappear. So your true self is originally empty. But that's not the same as it doesn't exist. There's no there, but here we are. So there's this flux, and there's this sort of nothing there, but here we are. And that's the world we live in. And then our mind wants to make things. So our practice means cutting through the attachment to the things that we make and being able to use everything to help this world. So in Mahayana Buddhism, very important are the bodhisattvas. And the bodhisattvas are these entities who refuse to enter nirvana, whatever that is, and I don't want to talk about it, who refuse to enter nirvana until all beings have awakened. So this is this great compassion. I'm not in it for me. It's not about what I get. It's all beings together. And that's actually the last line of the first chant we had. I can never remember the Korean, but the Sino-Korean rather, the Chinese. But the last line begins self-other, and then it goes on like instantly awaken together. So that's what we're about. We're about all together, and not holding on to anything so tightly that you can't see, oh, wait a minute, it's different now, because that's what we do. We hold on to things, and we don't see the flux. And we don't see through the delusion that there's something to hold on to. Another line from our morning bell chant, so Vairocana is he's the Buddha who's sort of the closest to the Abrahamic conception of God, because Vairocana is this Buddha who infuses all time and all space, all things, all energy, everything is infused by the essence of Vairocana. But instead of saying Vairocana is everywhere, which is what you'd expect to say, it says Vairocana has no fixed place. Because everywhere is always in flux, you know? So yeah, so true is just an idea. You don't have to hold on to true. Just what is this? You know, Jan mentioned Wadu. So Wadu is it's not only in Korea, but it's very emphasized in Korean Buddhism. Wadu is focusing on a great question and not expecting an answer. So one Wadu is, what is this? Another Wadu is, what am I? So my practice is on every out-breath, what am I? That's my practice. And if I ever said, what am I? Oh, I know what I am. It doesn't work. So we use these Wadus to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Sometimes the description is like a hot knife cutting through butter. So we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And any answer, in scare quotes, any answer that appears, we cut through that answer. And we cut through, and we cut through, and we cut through. Okay? So thank you very much for your question. Does anyone else have a question? You have another question. Okay.
I
Great.
have quite a few.
Put it by your mouth, yeah.
So what do you mean by cutting through? Like, do you mean like dismissing it, or do you mean like?
I don't mean dismissing it, yeah. So cutting through, it's a metaphor. Language is metaphor. All language is metaphor. What it means is we don't say, okay, I got it. I'm done. I don't have to think about this anymore. It means we just go deeper, 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 deeper. That's what that means. Yeah, we're not dismissing it. So thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? Do you have one back there? Okay.
Let's see. I'm wondering, is the microphone working?
The microphone's on, yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering how we can help others without abandoning ourselves.
How can we help others without abandoning ourselves?
Yes.
That's a wonderful question. And it's one that many of us have to face. So, first of all, you can never abandon yourself. What does that mean, to abandon yourself, right? You're there, you know? But your question, what you're really saying is, how can we help others and still have the resources to function? That's really your question. And at times in our lives, it's a really, really hard question. You know, there are these, like people like, you know, there was a bunch of stuff in some magazine or a newspaper or something that I saw online about someone whose husband was dying as she was giving birth. You know, you want to talk about being pulled all kinds of directions. Think of the extremity of that. Your husband needs you because you're dying. Your baby needs you because you've just given birth. So, and usually it's more kind of ordinary. Like somebody needs your attention, but you need to do something else at the same time. And how do you manage that? How do you continue to function and not just sort of get beaten down and become dysfunctional because you just can't take it anymore? That's your question. I don't know. But I do know that the clearer our mind is, the more we can see what our genuine needs are and what we think we need, but we actually don't. And the more we can see what the other person genuinely needs from us and not our idea of what they need from us. I mean, everyone's had the experience of like you're sick or something and someone goes all out of their way to like, you know, make you some kind of soup and you actually hate that soup. And they went to all kinds of trouble to make you that soup. And it's a kind of soup you just can't stand, you know. Everyone has had an experience similar to that. And probably everyone has been in the situation of the person making that soup, putting all that effort and energy into that soup that the person they're giving it to hates. But we don't realize it because you know, we're the person so proud of ourselves who are doing so much for this other person, right? So the more we practice, the more clarity we have on what it is that's actually needed and what it is that we're actually doing. So there's no rule book where you can look up, nothing like that. But as we practice, we become more and more clear. And that's the whole point, is this clarity. And from this clarity comes wisdom. From this wisdom comes compassion. From this compassion comes action. That's the whole point of practice, right there. So thank you very much for your question, and good luck with your life. Which we can say to all of us, right? Okay. Are there any other questions? You have another one? Okay. We paid him to come.
So you were talking about one of the Buddhas that's like in everything.
Vairocana, yeah.
Vairocana. What's his story, or what's their story? Like, if you don't mind.
I don't know. Vairocana doesn't have much of a story. If you're everywhere all at once, then nothing happens to you. Because where are you? To have something happen. A lot of the Buddhas have stories, like Shakyamuni Buddha, who's the Buddha on the altar back there, and the main Buddha that, you know, earthlings pay attention to. He has a big story, which I can see. I can tell, like, in a minute or two. You know, he was born a prince. His mother died almost immediately, like within 7 days or 10 days. It was a miraculous birth. You know, he was walking as soon as he was born and said, in heavens above and, you know, earth below, only I am holy, which is, of course, what every infant thinks, right? They're the center of the universe. They don't know anything else. But anyway, he grew up and he was this prince and he was, you know, he had everything. And then he bribed the charioteer to take him outside of the gates of the palace because his father, there had been a prophecy that when, you know, you're going to have a son and he's either going to be a great king or a great spiritual teacher. And the father was like, I don't want no great spiritual teachers around here. I want a great king. So it hid all suffering from him, supposedly. If you believe that, there's a bridge across the Kansas River. I would be happy to sell you, but okay. So anyway, charioteer takes him out of the palace in the middle of the night, and he sees a sick person. He says, what's that? I told you it's unbelievable. And the charioteer says, that's a sick person. And the Buddha goes, what? And he was still Gautama Shakyamuni then, takes him back to the palace. And the next night, he sees a dead person. Oh, first he sees an old person. I'm old. He saw me. He said, what's that? It's terrible. An old person. Then he sees a dead person. Then the third night he sees a sick person. And the third night he sees a dead person. What's that? It's a dead person. And then the fourth night he sees a, you know, wandering mystic. Oh, what's that? That's a, you know, sadhu, a holy man. Oh boy, I want to do that. So he cuts off his hair and finds a beggar, gives the beggar his fancy clothes, and he goes off into the forest. And he practices very hard with two very great teachers. And you can look up on Wikipedia, it tells you the names, I can't remember them. But it's not enough for him, because their practice was all about attaining states, you know, attaining various spiritual states. And Gautama Shakyamuni's question was, why is there suffering? That's why he left the palace. He realized there's this thing called suffering in this world. I did not know that. And like I said, there's a bridge across the Kansas River. I could sell you if you believe it. But he had this great question, why is there suffering? And that's actually the question that brings most of us to practice, except usually it's, why am I suffering? You know? But Gautama Shakyamuni was very high class. It was, why is there suffering in this world? Because he wasn't suffering, you know? He had everything. And so he practices with these two great teachers, and they each consecutively ask him to be their successor, and he says, I'm not interested. I have not answered this question. So finally he goes off by himself, and he sits maybe for 6 days, maybe for 6 years, it depends on what the version tells you, under this tree, and he just says, I'm not going to stop sitting until I've attained this. Why is there suffering in this world? What are the causes of suffering? And then one morning, he sees the morning star, and he wakes up, just boom, he wakes up. And then he says, this is so simple, nobody's going to believe me, but all the gods and all these beings come down and they say, please, please teach humanity. So he starts teaching. And the first thing he taught was the Four Noble Truths. And the first one is that if you exist, you are suffering. Existence entails suffering. And so people think that Buddhism is a very sad religion because everything is suffering. But the second noble truth is, here are the causes of suffering. Desire, anger, ignorance. There are other versions, but in Zen we hold to the version of desire, anger, and ignorance. And ignorance doesn't mean you don't know who the President of the United States was in 1893, but it means that you are ignorant of your true nature. There's that word, true nature, again. You're ignorant of how things actually are. So ignorance of how things are. And that is the cause of so much suffering, because we think we know something and we do something, and then it hurts a lot of people. You just look what's going on, you know, in Iran and Israel and Qatar and all these places right now, because somebody had an idea of how things are and how things would be, and then boom, you have all this suffering. So, desire, anger, ignorance. And then the third noble truth is, there is a way out. What could be better? There's a way out of this suffering. And what is the way out? Well, in conventional Buddhism, it's the Eightfold Path. In Zen, it's practice. So Buddhism is actually this tremendously optimistic religion. You don't have to suffer. I mean, you will suffer, but it doesn't have to bother you. You know? Yeah, you know, I have bad knees, Wendy has a bad hip, you know, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's true. You know, and people we love die, and we mourn them. I mean, it's not like, oh, great, somebody died. And like, you know, Trump with, oh, great, Mueller died, I'm so happy. Not like that. No, you mourn, you grieve, you feel pain, all of this. But how do you use it? You understand that it's not, that doesn't limit you, it enlarges you. How do you use that to help this world? It doesn't control you. You use it. So yeah, so that's Shakyamuni Buddha. And that's the main one. And then there were all the bodhisattvas. There's Jijang Bosal, Cittagarbha, and there's Kwanzaa Bosal, Kuan Yin. And we chanted to both of them this morning. You know? So yeah, and then the last chant, that was a huge mantra. It has no actual, you know, dictionary meaning, but that's all dedicated to Kuan Yin. So yeah, so there's a big Buddhist pantheon. Could take a lot of time, but we're out of time. So let's stop the recording. I guess I'll have to stop it.